Hello and welcome to EEXSport Talk. I'm your host, C Enyadike Jr. AFCON 2025 is officially well underway. We're about to enter Group 3, and it's already been delivering. Goals, drama, controversy, and just plenty to talk about. Joining me today are Emeka Enyadike and Mario Leo. Gentlemen, great to have you on. Let's get into it. This is a question for both of you. AFCON 2025, we barely settled in. We've seen a lot of shocks. We've seen a lot of late goals and a few heated debates. Overall, how has the tournament looked to you? Mr. Mario, if you want to go first, I think.
Yeah, I can start. I think the tournament is always exciting. Obviously, there is a bit of frustration of European teams, especially in England and Italy, where the season continues. Germany obviously has a break now, so it's not too hitting them too heavily in the player loss. But overall, coming back to the tournament, great start, I think. I mean, Egypt doing very well. We're going to talk about the Super Eagles, with 2 wins out of 2 matches. So very impressive, very good. Obviously, the stadiums are amazing in Morocco. The infrastructure is fabulous. Obviously, that's something which is fantastic to see, and something obviously where Morocco is miles and years ahead of other African nations, especially Sub-Sahara. So it's great to see. I'm glad it's on. I heard obviously the decision by CAF that it's going to be switched to every 4 years from 2029 onwards. We can discuss that as well, whether that's good or bad, because obviously it's a big change in the legacy of African football. But I like it. I'm a big fan of the AFCON, and so hand over to Emeka. It's good to see.
Well, look, it's like Mario said, it's been quite a phenomenal start to the tournament. Really great matches we've seen so far. Morocco impressive in the tournament. They did struggle a bit in the second game. South Africa, very, very, very exciting start. And then what drama we had in the game against Egypt. Mo Salah obviously putting behind everything before the tournament and getting on with the goals. We've seen the good, we've seen the drama, a lot of drama around VAR and all kinds of decisions. But we've seen some goals, we've seen some amazing football. We've seen great organization by CAF. We've seen very good stadiums. Shows that Morocco is probably ready for World Cup 2030. And on the whole, I think credit to Africa. Not very excited about the fact that it's holding it during Christmas, but what can you say? When all the greats in Africa gather together, we just have to celebrate the moment. It's been very good for the.
Let's start with Nigeria, because of course we do. Because of course, right now, white, and that's why we're here. Right now, they're the top of Group C. They didn't moving on from World Cup. They're top of Group C. They're unbeaten. They're looking strong. But that last game with Tunisia, it's raising a few eyebrows. They were 3-0. They were cruising. Then Tunisia scores 2 late goals, and suddenly the final 10 minutes were tense. How did Nigeria let it happen, in your opinion? I think both of you.
It's a typical gift. It's a typical game of football. Yeah. So you're in a comfort zone. You're cruising. You're scoring the 3rd goal. You're switching off. Now it's time to obviously shine and do some showcasing, and suddenly your opponent scores a goal, and the eagerness and sees a chance, and Tunisia obviously scored a 2nd goal quickly after, and obviously then the game momentum shifts completely when Tunisia obviously was in the ranks. So when you look into the Super Eagles squad, they've got a fantastic midfield, or a very good midfield, and a fantastic, outstanding offense. I was always concerned, obviously, about the defense, because in Germany there's the big saying, defense wins you championships, the offense wins you just games. So that's obviously the momentum I see. And Nigeria has 2 wins. It looks very comfortable in the table, but the first game was a 2-1 victory, and the second game a 3-2 victory. So there wasn't a real kind of domination. It was a 1-goal difference between the opponent and the Super Eagles. But obviously, from a confidence perspective, 2 wins in a tournament is fantastic. And obviously, it's raising expectation. Nigerian media is now trumping, saying, are we AFCON favorites? Yeah, because we are so dominating. Besides Egypt, the only team with 2 wins out of 2. So that's something, obviously, which has to be considered. And that will come to the team at some point. where this expectation management of winning games and then obviously becoming an AFCON favorite to win the tournament is hitting the team, and how the team then kind of reacts to it, responds to it.
Yeah.
And we're going to see in game 3, because Nigeria is now in the knockout stage with 2 wins pretty safely. And obviously then in game 3, we can then see. Yeah. So I look forward to game 3, because obviously that should be really then the confidence game, where you're just kind of really resting some key players, but testing others. And I want to see the bench players, who not started the 2 games, but if they come on, if they are starting game 3, they should be really threatening the existing starting 11 to show that the Super Eagles have a strong bench, that the coach can rely on every single player chosen by this tournament. And obviously then I would say Nigeria
I think it's very interesting you mentioned the bench, because
in the run for,
my next question was about Coach Eric Chell, going back to that Tunisia game, and we'll discuss this upcoming one just shortly. But going back to the Tunisia game, Coach Eric Chell, he made 2 big changes. You mentioned the offense and the midfield. He took off Akor Adams, top striker. He took off the defensive midfielder, Frank Onyeka. He brought in 2 wingers, that being Moses Simon and Chidera Ajuke. That felt rather strange. Again, they were 3 up. You tried to consolidate that. Was that, in your mind, what do you make of that decision? Do you think it was, again, like you were mentioning, where we're up, let's just empty out our bench a bit, have these players up here, see what they can do, because we can't possibly lose at this point? Or was it some other mindset? What do you think about that?
I mean, when you see, obviously he changed. He took out Onyeka, but he brought in Moses Simon, also a very, very experienced player. He brought in Chidera Ajuke, who plays in Sevilla. So the players coming on now, obviously of great talent and very strong coming in, but obviously they have to get into the game. And obviously, if you change at the 97th minute and you kind of sort of concede a goal. We just conceded a goal, the 3-1, where the opponent is kind of really running. I mean, I would have really changed very, very differently, to be honest, because obviously with the 3rd goal, after 67 or after 70 minutes, 3 minutes after the goal, I would have substituted, because obviously there is 3-goal lead. You're bringing in some fresh legs. You can move backwards. You can let the opponent come to you, because the opponent needs to threaten. The opponent needs to come back. And that gives you, with fresh leg offensively, obviously space for counter-attacking. And that's why I would do the same changes, but I would have changed 10 minutes earlier, not after 79 minutes. I would have scored after, I would have changed after 69 minutes, after the 3rd goal was in. So that's where I very often see in African football that coaches don't see to kind of have this kind of strategy or philosophy in their playing style.
Like you
or
mentioned,
in their team
Nigeria
style.
there. Sorry, Dad, you can go next.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that this is one problem that Eric Chell has shown in a few games so far. That temptation to bring on more offensive players when you're needing to consolidate. When you take out Frank Onyeka, you expose the team, because he's been like a defensive shield for this team. And I would have imagined that what would have been needed would have been to bring on another defensive midfielder, or even bring on an extra defender, because Tunisia, we know they're very set up like Italians. They like to counterattack. But once they got a goal, the incentive was for them to push forward, and then you needed a bit more players. And when you bring on wingers who are players who may not even track back to help defend, then it makes it a bit put a lot more pressure on the team. So I think it's something he needs to learn. This happened in the game against Zimbabwe in the World Cup qualifiers, where Nigeria scored a late goal and needed to try and keep that, but they went out looking for another goal, and then they conceded. Overall, they had a very good game. They played pretty well. I thought at some point they were in cruise control. They had this game almost like in the wraps. 3 goals up. They looked pretty good. Then they conceded 1 goal. That was still 2 goals advantage. I want to see the coach be more cautious rather than throwing some of those things. And like Mario said, the defense wins you championships. So he needs to actually prioritize that. This is one of the reasons why we got to the finals at the last AFCON, because we were set up defensively very strong. We know we have the quality. We will score goals with Lookman, with Osimhen, with all the players that we have. But we just have to pay more attention to defending.
Like you said, Mr. Mario,
we can win this.
Nigeria were basically already in the knockout stages. We just have that one more game against Uganda. Uganda are basically at the bottom. So this is their game. They're basically the ones who have something to gain here. On paper, this should be clear as day, but anything can happen. What should Nigeria do, differently in this game to avoid another, late scare? They're not going to lose their position, but still, you want to end the group stages on top. I know you said this might be the good game, the best game to to test out some of your players that are on the bench and just, show off the true strength of your team. But would it be better maybe to just play it safe, just make sure we get through this and then we move on?
Yeah, I mean, when you look into the standing of the table, obviously Uganda is not out yet. Yeah, they've got 1 point. Tunisia got 3 points. So if Uganda with the Uganda Cranes kind of beat the Super Eagles, they sit on 4 points. And Tunisia doesn't win the other game. Obviously, Uganda can qualify for the knockout stage as runners-up of the group. We shouldn't underestimate Uganda, but definitely I would bring in fresh legs. Definitely I would bring in the bench, but I would obviously let Uganda control the game, use the space in the offense because I have speedy players, fast players, technically savvy players, and would bring the counters towards Uganda and shock them. And obviously, Victor Osimhen, he scored a goal already, also he scored goals already in the tournament. He's on fire, and obviously he wants to prove to Africa that he's one of the best players on the continent, and obviously that gives him chances and opportunities. He needs space to kind of get his speed up and get his space for his control of scoring goals. Like I said, I would shift it a little bit. I would probably change 3 or 4 players, likely midfield and defense, a little bit and just rest some of the players, but I wouldn't definitely not underestimate the Uganda Cranes because the way the table is standing overall.
Well, look, I think that for the next game, Nigeria must bear in mind that one of the biggest upsets in AFCON history was Uganda versus Nigeria in 1978 in the semifinals of the AFCON, when Nigeria had possibly one of their greatest teams with a chance to win the AFCON, and Uganda beat Nigeria 2-1. I was a kid, but I still remember that's how much agony it was. They had a guy called Filippo Mondi. This must be playing on the minds of the Ugandans. And for instance, Uganda has got a striker who's Nigerian.
Who's his
I
mother?
don't know how to say it, Ugandan Nigerian or Nigerian Uganda, who scored their crucial goal for them in the last game. So he has
so it's Ugandan Nigerian then.
Yeah, his mother is Ugandan, his father is Nigerian. So pretty much. You don't want a blip on your records. You want to go in there, try and win that game, even if you make changes to the squad. Win that game and maybe a chance for Osimhen to add a few more goals to his tally, and Lookman.
Yeah, it's funny thing, isn't it? Actually, I wanted to even
if you change the team too much, they might be rusty
Lookman and Osimhen
in the next games.
I think going into if I could sidetrack to what was it, the Golden Boot, top goal scorer. Going into this one, like the 2 top favorites that I think everybody was looking at were Salah and Osimhen. Lookman was there, like much lower in the top 10. And then I think over the course of the week, Lookman actually overtook Osimhen in terms of what a lot of people are looking at in terms of his standing in that one. So yeah, like that point about Osimhen trying to get more goals in, that one might be very important for him.
Yeah, he's had too many goals disallowed in the last 2 AFCON. So Lookman, 2 goals. I mean, he scored in the first game, scored yesterday. Scored also in the game against Tunisia, and he had 2 assists in that game. So he's one guy who's actually showing great fire. Mo Salah already has 2 goals in this tournament.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see how that goes. At the end of the day, what matters at the end of the day is who wins the title. Sometimes this record. And Osimhen is like two goals away from, a few goals away from equaling Rashidi Yekini's record for Nigeria. And that's
but Mr. Mari, this next one, we're gonna zoom out a bit.
A lot to play
Which
for.
teams have impressed you in the AFCON just so far?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, for me today, actually, obviously the 3-2 victory of Mozambique is against Gabon is a very big upset for me. Obviously, with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang in the strike force, you don't expect to kind of lose it. But obviously, as I always say in many of the African radio shows and TV appearances, I say it's not about the individuals. It's the team spirit. It's the dressing room. And obviously, therefore, it's very good to see where these these results, and kind of really bring Mozambique into the game, and then obviously in the group in a very comfortable 3 points with two big giants, Ivory Coast and Cameroon, sitting on top. So that's for me kind of the most impressive. The Democratic Republic of Congo is performing as they did so far in the World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah, no,
Emeka already
basically
mentioned that
they're
Morocco
everyone's pick to win the
did
whole
very
thing.
well,
Basically.
and obviously they are for me.
Everyone's saying Morocco's going to win
host.
this, but who knows?
Yeah, but I think, I mean, but the North Africans will chase it. I mean, Algeria will chase it. Riyad Mahrez is in fine form for Algeria. Mo Salah is obviously
you have to wonder, is he the problem or Liverpool the problem?
Touch again. So
because it's like as soon as both sides separated, Liverpool starts winning games, he's doing well in AFCON. So is it like, I wonder who the problem is, because both as soon as you take away both sides, they're both doing well now. So when they're away from each other, I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it does. Yeah, but we see. Yeah, but there your gift. You need to see how the coach kind of sets it up. Obviously, at Liverpool, Salah is one player out of 11 stars, and in Egypt there's one star and 10 kind of working for Mo Salah and running for Mo Salah. So obviously there's different expectations from the coaches, and obviously with Egypt, the tactics and the strategy is built around Mo Salah capacity, talent, and obviously great gift of a fantastic footballer he is. And obviously then when pride and personality is kind of really let's say in question, as it is in Liverpool, obviously you need to see, does one person win the games or do we need a team to win the game? And obviously his interview in the mixed zone wasn't a great gift. It shattered literally his reputation within the fans, because the fans immediately responded on social media, nobody is bigger than our club. And obviously that's been more harming him than benefiting him. And obviously, on the other hand, obviously, the Egypts are very proud to have such a fantastic, outstanding football player. And there he could go into the interviews and could say that, his teammates weren't good enough, and the coach shouldn't substitute him, and nobody would be as reputational. It's just different. Yeah, so that's what I mean.
For me, I think it was good drama. It was good drama it was great for the Premier League because everyone was talking about it. I mean, on social media, you know better than I do, Mario. There's nothing that works better than negative publicity. And I think at the end of the day, it got fans talking. Everyone had an opinion, all the former players. And the craziest part of it is everyone is speculating that he's going to go to Saudi Arabia, which I doubt, because Mo Salah wants to break records. He loves playing for Liverpool. I think he just doesn't want to be on the bench. And I think that him being on the bench for as long as he was purely a function of how the team has not played well. Collectively, it wasn't just about him. The team, too many new players, and that affected him a great deal. But we're happy at the end of it. And I think Liverpool fans also are happy that he's back and scoring goals. So if he does well as he's doing at AFCON, he will come back in great shape and continue to score goals. And we want to see him. Want to see him in the Premier League. Want to see him performing at the highest level, competing against some of the best players like Mo Salah and Ronaldo. Are players that they're obsessed with records. They want to win all the time. They want to play every game. So I will excuse him if he's not happy to sit on the bench. But at the end of the day, he came back and proved that he could still do something by providing an assist for Ekitike in the last game. But we're back.
And speaking of goals, you mentioned again Victor Osimhen's his disallowed goals. Yeah, but it's just the penalty calls and the VAR decisions. Morocco, Comoros, Benin, DR Congo, South Africa. VAR is still kind of in its infancy, sort of here in Africa. So are we like in growing pains, or officials just don't really know what to do with this new thing? Are they struggling to apply it consistently, Mr. Mario? If you want to,
I think.
Okay, Dad.
Mario, go on.
No, Emeka, start first. Come, start first.
Okay, so I think that with VAR, nobody ever knows who will be happy with it. There's always someone who's unhappy with VAR. What I think the fans need to understand is they need to read the rules very well, particularly when the ball hits the player's hand. You need to go and read the rules. Sometimes they tell you,
Yeah.
The hand is in a natural position. If someone is falling, you expect him to use his hands to try and prevent himself from getting injured. If someone is jumping up, you still need
Like
your hands to
volleyball slaps it.
But at the end of the day, if someone actually deliberately moves his hand towards the ball, you can see that he did that. Yes, you can see that he did that, or he does it in a clever way. But at the end of the day, you find that in the course of play, someone is falling and the ball hits
every time.
Everyone, you see all the players, they act like kids. They start running around the referee, even telling the referee to go look at the VAR, and then eventually they go to VAR. I have never seen a VAR decision that everyone agrees with. To be honest, a lot of the VAR decisions, there's always conspiracy theories around it. And that's what makes the game interesting. In fact, before VAR, we used to excuse some of these human errors where the referee does that. The one area where technology has been perfect has been in the goal line technology. That one is instant. It beeps in the referee's hands like on his watch, and you know immediately that it's a goal if it goes up. But VAR is still subjective. It still requires. I mean, in England they used to draw a lot of lines, and what I found really amazing is that the last AFCON in Cote d'Ivoire, everyone praised the VAR. People were happy with it. But I think the one game where there was the biggest drama was South Africa versus Egypt. And even Hugo Bros said afterwards that Mo Salah said, no, he didn't think it would be a penalty. The question at the end of the day, it's not the opinion of the players, not the opinion of the coaches. It's what the referees and the VAR guys decide. And that, unfortunately, we have to live with whenever they make those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, many things are said already, Gift. And I think VAR obviously has changed the game significantly. The ultimate quest that VAR makes the game fairer and kind of avoids mistake. That was a myth right from the beginning, because it's the role between the two referees which we need to understand as well. If the referee in the cellar in front of the VAR screen tries to supersede the referee on the pitch, it will fail. They need to work together as a team. The referee on the pitch obviously needs to be in control. The referee on the pitch needs to have the decision. And obviously you can see that when a decision on the referee on the pitch is overruled by the referee on VAR, a referee takes 2-3 minutes to find his routines in the game again. He's different in handling certain situations. And obviously that's something which VAR has not resolved yet. And obviously when you have very strong, very reputational, very, very kind of great personalities, it's not a problem. But I see on African referees, definitely, it's not only taking 2 or 3 minutes after something is overruled by VAR, it sometimes is from this moment onwards. It's a different game because the referee on the pitch kind of rules differently, is more cautious about things, is more interacting on the microphone. And that's what I mean. That's why he lacks then this sovereign presence. And the players notes this, and obviously the players use this opportunity as well to find of their means and kind of
try and
get their kind of advantage through this situation, because obviously players are not stupid. They know if there's
he's been opening
strong
himself
personality
up
on the pitch, or whether there's a weak personality refereeing the games. And not only bullying, I mean, if a referee responds, usually you see more yellow cards after something happens because he tries to control the game and become the center of the game again. But then the referee forgets that he's just kind of refereeing the game and not kind of managing the game of how it turns. So, and I think that's why it will take some time. I think virtual reality will make it more fair, because virtual reality is less emotional or not emotional at all, and therefore crucial decisions will be refereed or decided by virtual reality or by artificial intelligence. Will obviously then kind of be really clear whether it's a handball or not.
AI referees.
Referees and umpires are supposed to be
they will be the referee, because obviously then
I think I can't remember what year
it was. Different game.
It was I was hearing on the radio, like one of the top jobs replaced by robots and AI. That was like referees and umpires in just about every sport there is. Every sport where you have an official AI and robots, and I guess I can understand from the because you said taking the emotion out. Football is it's built on emotion. You can't have the sport without emotion, which I guess is one of those aspects of VAR that I don't know. Some part of me almost feels like it's somewhat harmed, because you score a goal, but then you can't really celebrate just yet because you have to wait 2 or 3 minutes, wait for the decision. Oh, okay, now we can cheer. and then by then the moment's not quite there. So yeah, so that's my view on it, really. Yeah.
Totally agree.
And I understand it. I mean, it's you're not alone with this kind of opinion. I'm, as Emeka knows, I'm also a very big critics about VAR, because obviously the fans don't know whether to cheer or not to cheer. And it's really changed a lot of the game flows. And obviously, like I said, if we don't have one standard, if everybody kind of implements his own kind of standard, then it will not be successful, because ultimately it needs to be accepted by fans. And obviously we see that fans turn away more and more from sport and kind of look at other sports, because they feel it's more controversial, it's more exciting.
I don't know if that's
and that's what football needs to be really conscious about.
Different federations thing, or even within leagues. But then again, that one, now you're going back to the everyone's doing their own thing kind of thing. I know that's like a thing from the top, where it's like, this is how we do it, everybody follow, etc. Yeah, Dad, at the very top, you mentioned the fact, you didn't like the fact that AFCON is taking place during December. Yeah, fans just about everywhere except in England. They're traveling, they're on holiday. Some people are working, balancing work. Football, like, how does that, or at least from what you've seen and just in general, how does that impact attendance, atmosphere, and even the players when they go out there and their energy?
I think it's a bit difficult for people to travel, because a lot of people want to travel and go on holiday during Christmas. Now some fans have to consider traveling to Morocco for the tournament. If you're a proper fan, you need to make a plan to go towards there. And we haven't seen. We've seen a lot of Moroccan fans, but also we see with the Nigeria game, there were a lot of fans from Tunisia, which is just down the road. Christmas is not so much their thing. What we've seen has been a lot more fans on following the game on TV and on social. The engagement has been so much, even when people are supposed to be on holiday. So maybe it works that it's happening during the holiday, because a lot of people have free time, so they are watching and they are engaging. And Mario has got the chat for the fans, which I bet he can share.
Let's actually look at that, Mr.
Insights
Mari.
into just how the
you've
how
obviously
many
been
fans are
tracking the
following
fan
up on all
engagement. How active have supporters been across the platform so far?
Very, very active. As Emeka was saying, it's like, since everybody is at home, nobody is at work, and maybe everybody gets bored eventually, and football is kind of really now the perfect distraction of it, and you can really engage with it. It's obviously, I'm two-sided on this, obviously, in terms of timing, but obviously AFCON has to fit some sort into a frame calendar of FIFA. And I think, obviously, to hold this massive tournament for Africa, I think it was like really the best possible, let's say, coordination to make it worthwhile. And people are heavily engaged. And obviously, what we shared on the group stage tables at the beginning of the tournament, we're going to uplift after the group stage matches are over. But already now we can see, obviously, as Emeka was saying, a huge amount of video consumption, video views, match highlights being consumed on social media, a lot of engagement during the matches, people frustrated, their team losing, people exciting, their team winning. And obviously then that's battled out on tough profiles, but also the individual participating nations. They've improved significantly from the last AFCON, and I can see, obviously, that CAF has done quite a lot with the member association to focus more on social media, and I'm glad that all the nations participating have a presence, and this presence is ever growing, especially when they are having multiplying effects. Multiplying effects meaning that they are printed in newspapers, that they are shown and talked and discussed, like in podcasts, in radio shows, broadcasted on TV. And then people look on their mobile, where can I find my player, my favorite player? Where can I find my national team? And then obviously go to the federation profiles and engage with them. And
when it comes to like just the different groups during these group stages, you think the fan activity online, is actually matching some of what we are at least seeing on the pitch during the matches, at least with the Moroccan fans, Tunisian fans, the fans that have been able to attend?
Yeah, I mean, social media, absolutely a gift. Social media makes it a real-time conversation. A VAR decision is being discussed on profiles. Anything event-related activity on the game is discussed on the social media profiles. And what the participating federations need to understand, obviously, is they would like to have this conversation on their profiles, because obviously then you can control it. If people kind of moaning, complaining,
Yes.
among across other kind of profiles like pundits profiles or whatever, then you cannot control the conversation. And
They
that's
should get in
obviously
there.
you would like to have control of the conversation. And today, social media has nothing to do anymore with communication. Yeah, no, but social media has got nothing to do with communication or content distribution anymore. Social media today is psychology, and with psychology, you want to control the conversation. You want to step in when the discussions get rough, get ugly. You want to step in and guideline kind of these conversations and really steer it. That's why there is still a lot of work to be done by national association, and obviously they need to understand that in 9 out of 10 cases, the first touch point of somebody interested with the national team is happening on social media. Nobody comes to the website. They will come to social media. The conversation takes place on social media. The discussion takes place on social media.
Yeah.
And the controversy
I think, but
around the
saying, like,
games discussed on social media.
I think something that a lot of businesses at least are doing is, like, when it comes to these conversations, is the people are talking on somebody else's account, somebody else's comment section, and they themselves they'll slide in. Now, obviously, they're probably, there's something, there's a bit of like you gotta be careful as the actual national team account. But I think that's something they can look into, where the conversation is happening elsewhere. Okay, let's actually slide in over here, and then we're at least visible, and where people are having those conversations, we are physically present there, or, well, not physically present, digitally present there in those comment sections. And at the very least, you might not be able to control that, but you can actively be part of that. Hopefully that can also come your side as well.
Well, look, we've seen a lot of African federations actually take their social media activities seriously.
Yeah, is that the Qatar effect, or is that genuine?
Morocco, they gained a lot of fans during the World Cup in Qatar. Yeah. No, it was genuine. I mean, they followed them, and this wasn't just Moroccan fans. It was African fans. It was also fans from everywhere, because don't forget, the Moroccan players are playing for some of the biggest teams. I mean, Hakimi plays for PSG, and they have players in Man United. They have players everywhere. Even they have players in the Saudi. The goalkeeper Bono moved to Saudi. So a lot of the fan base, has continued to grow. Senegal has got players everywhere. They've got players in the Premier League. Nigeria's got Victor Osimhen, who's a big star in Europe, and he's always someone that everyone talks about. You find that when the federation is deliberate about how they engage on social media, then they're able to. And we've seen a lot of improvement with Nigeria in the last 2 or 3 years. And maybe they missed out on not going to the World Cup, because that would have helped them a great deal. But we've seen tremendous progress in terms of how they've tried to engage, particularly even with the female team. The Super Falcons is one of Africa's best social media accounts. And so you find that African fans are heavily involved in global conversations around Premier League and Champions League and everything. And so this AFCON offers them a chance, particularly with all the leagues. I mean, Bundesliga is not in action. There's no Champions League games, only Premier League. So when their favorite teams are not playing, they are also heavily engaged with AFCON. And that's a big lesson for us in Africa, because we've seen a great deal of activity on something African that we don't usually find when the European season is in full swing. And that for me is something really, really interesting. Yeah, so remember, we can look at Mario. Can take us through the numbers from the various African athletes.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do so. And obviously, when you see, as Emeka was saying with the conversations, and obviously you're absolutely right, Emeka, in the Moroccan players playing everywhere in big teams, in big countries, from Hakim Ziyech, Hakimi, there are so many playing around, and obviously they have fans at PSG, or there's Turkish fans following Victor Osimhen. They don't want to miss a goal. Victor Osimhen, kind of as an individual player, doesn't post enough for his fans. That's why these fans seek the national association profiles or the national team profiles to really go and find their content about Victor Osimhen. That's why they follow then from outside. They follow then a Nigerian table. That's why we recommend for the National Association to do a social demographic analysis of who is your community, where do they come from, to give the right content, because sometimes you forget, you speak the wrong language, or you publish the wrong language, and people don't understand and cannot engage with the content. And that's what obviously we see the North Africans been doing over the last 5-6 years already. And Morocco is obviously leading the overall table with 11.5 million followers across all their social media channels. And the biggest is Instagram, with almost 6 million followers from the national team of Morocco, followed by Egypt in Group B with 9.6 million followers. And the biggest profile is Facebook with 2.4 million. And then, not surprisingly, obviously, Algeria in 3 with almost 7.8 million followers, with 2.6 million Instagram followers as their kind of focus. The biggest surprise is not a surprise, because that's what we see already with Yanga, with the big teams from Tanzania, that Tanzania is a very, very strong and very social media heavy public and fans. And obviously they are with 5.8 million, even ahead of Nigeria, which obviously has much higher population. Tanzania obviously is so social media savvy. And out of their 5.7 million total following, there's 3.7 million on Instagram. And like I said, this is what we see in club football. We see also national team football and the national federation very much the same, that in northeastern Africa, Tanzania, or kind of Eastern Africa, Instagram has a much higher relevance than Facebook or X or TikTok. And therefore, these heavy use platforms, it's quite kind of symbolic where the biggest platforms come and what the biggest platforms used in those countries. They're very much the same very often.
You mentioned a lot of the engagement in Nigeria among the Nigerian fans, and I guess one of the big talking points was Sunday Olise's commentary, which even led to a public statement. Where do you stand on that situation?
I think it's I find it very, very interesting that the fans got that much. I don't think it had a lot to do with his commentary. I'm a huge fan of Sunday Olise, who served Nigeria very well, one of our greatest players. And I think that he's someone who knows him very well. He's very opinionated. He has strong views, and he sees white and he says it's white. He sees black and he says it's black. And I mean, I grew up in my early days of broadcasting as a color commentator with the national TV through a lot of games. And when you're a color commentator, you ask questions sometimes as the game progresses, with the commentator, the main commentator, wanting you to weigh in from time to time. And so, Olise is more of an analyst. This is the first time I'm actually seeing him on commentary. And as an analyst, he has a very strong opinion. And so he says his mind exactly how it is, and that's what happened during that game. And I don't see anything wrong with any of the things that he said, except that he was pointing out obviously where they had gaps and what have you. But Nigerian fans are very, 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 very much in the corner of their team, particularly having failed to qualify for the World Cup. So obviously they probably were not taken to some of those comments, and then he had to put out a statement, which I think that it's all fair to put out that. But I didn't think that he even needed to put out any statement, because he's entitled to his opinion. And at the end of the day, it works out pretty well how a commentary goes. When you live in a world like social media, people will have an opinion, whether they'll agree with you and they disagree with you. So you can never win with fans. But at the end of the day, it's what we love to see, in social media era. We want to see more fans engaging. We want to see a lot more conversations going on. We want to see more engagement. We want to see the growth of these kind of conversations. And I know you understand what I'm saying, Mario.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I agree overall as well. I mean, Sunday Olise is given everything on the pitch for the Super Eagles and his country. He was there when the federation was not very strong and kind of went to become the head coach. So therefore, obviously, he has the right for his opinion. But again, it's one opinion. And as Emeka is saying, as an analyst, it's sometimes much easier to kind of use the black and white. As a commentator, you usually are supposed to be a little bit more diplomatic and kind of really be a little bit more gentle, because obviously the game can change within seconds, or the game momentum can change within a minute. And somebody who you criticized 30 seconds earlier just suddenly scores a goal and is the hero. That's obviously a big game changer. Like I said, I mean, I don't see anything critical. Sometimes obviously the audience is very emotional, it's very patriotic, and anything where you kind of want to improve, the people don't allow you to improve. And that's something obviously I see as a weakness, because in today's world, you need to be open to learn constantly. It's a lifelong learning environment, because obviously technology assists us to become much more knowledgeable than somebody 30, 40, 50 years ago. We have much more access to statistics and insights. We have even now prospecting areas where the commentators base the expected goals, because the machines and artificial intelligence calculates how many goals can happen in those matches. And obviously then when you're commentating or being a commentator, you should kind of have the overall flow to see the bigger picture, not being too black and white or too opinionated. But like I said, I don't see anything wrong, and I actually quite liked his commentary, to be honest, because what he kind of
what are you
as
talking about?
commentator is he knows what the player thinks, he knows the player decisions, so it's a much more different perspective from Sunday Oliseh than somebody who has never played football, somebody who's never been on a global stage, somebody who's never been experienced having a sweaty shirt and kind of controversy and refereeing decision. So therefore, this is something obviously I strongly back and support Sunday Oliseh. And I think, again, it was not necessary to make this public statement. But obviously, you do it when you feel the need for it. And I think he's done rightfully so, to just show his gratitude and obviously his kind of personality, that he cares about people, about people overall, and therefore I'm glad he did.
And for me, I like the fact that CAF has gone the extra mile to bring former players from Africa. We are used to seeing African commentary where you have European commentators and European experts, but now we're seeing the players who have played in Africa, African stars, legends, actually being put to use. I think it's great. Yeah, we want to see a bit more of them. Amokachi and a few other players. We want to see more of the African legends, because
thank you both for
they
that.
have played the game and
They
know what those guys are on the pitch.
Last question for both of you. Yeah. There have been renewed talks about pushing AFCON to every 4 years. Now, we just talked about just how great pretty much the level of engagement and interest in African football in AFCON, especially around this period when all the top European leagues are currently, cooling off. Is that going to cause it to lose momentum? Or does it make sense? Does it make sense? Does it make things a bit easier with planning? Because I think one of those big issues that, just for me personally, is the fact that this thing is almost never consistent, because it's just the month, or the chosen month and the chosen period at which it shows up can kind of just change with the wind a bit. So I'm not sure. But like I said, we saw the engagement, we've seen the engagement, the interest, everything. What's the opinion there? Is it a good decision? Does it help, or does it hinder?
Obviously, I mean, I can start responding to that. Obviously, it's an initiative driven and forced by FIFA, because obviously just to align the international global calendars of tournaments, of matches, because obviously FIFA needs to find space for his growing club competition, the Club World Cup. And obviously, if AFCON is playing every 2 years, there is no time in the framework of the calendar to have these matches or these tournaments on a club level. And that's why FIFA is trying to align the framework of calendars, owning more competitions, to generate more revenue, to generate more buzz, to generate more relevance for football on global scale. That's the FIFA initiative. Obviously, as an African football fan, you're very sad that you're going to move from every 2 years to 4 years on that side. But when you are being really honest with yourself, the challenge Africa very often has to find a host nation who kind of can meet the criteria and standard of stadiums, venues needed for such a tournament. We had in the past many of the conversations where hosts been exchanged because the timelines shifted, the stadiums were not finished, the infrastructure was not ready. So therefore, obviously, those limitations are actually benefiting Africa sport as well. And if you hear to the players, or if you listen to the players might also be very happy, because don't forget, I mean, the African stars are playing on a global scale, almost playing every 4 or 5 days in the calendar, and you need to travel to those matches and you need to come home from those matches. So to regenerate and re-practice, you don't have time at all in the calendar. So although, like I said, being a very big fan of AFCON, I'm very sad that it's going to happen every 4 years. Ultimately, from a marketing and European sales, marketing, communication perspective, if the tournament is less often, the sponsor revenues generated are usually higher, because obviously there is no inflation, there is no saturation. Everybody is eager to kind of want to see that tournament, like the European Championships every 4 years, obviously generate record after record after record every time, from an attendance, from a revenue generation, from a participation, from an engagement level, because it's held every 4 years. So, like I said, overall, I'm sad that it's going to switch from a 2-year cycle to a 4-year cycle, but it will be benefiting CAF, it will be benefiting the host nation, it will be benefiting fans as well, because obviously there is constantly highlights on the international or global football calendar which we can follow.
For me, I think that's, it's very, very sad that we have to move it from once every 2 years to 4 years, because that this is Africa's celebration. And I blame CAF, because CAF had the opportunity in 2019 when they moved it to the summer in Egypt, and there was no complaints from European clubs because it was played around that same time. They should have kept it into that calendar, but there's always this argument about, oh, it rains in June, it rains all the time. Morocco has shown that it's not the rain. You can play football in the rain. The current AFCON, there's been rains almost every day. But because the stadiums are well built, there's proper drainage and everything works. Sorry, we've seen games go on. So the tournament could have been played in June, and we wouldn't have run into this calendar issue. They opened up that space, and now, having to move it to 4 years, and then this whole idea of African Nations League. I mean, we don't have to copy what the Europeans do. We need to constantly look around for ways to create our tournaments in a way. And AFCON has been, in fact, AFCON actually started before the European Championship. CAF has become like a copycat. They scrapped the Cup Winners' Cup in Africa, scrapped the CAF Cup, and created the Confederations Cup, just copying everything that Europe does, without looking at ways in which we can actually own our own structures. Personally, I am very disappointed with the idea of moving the AFCON to every 4 years, because every 2 years, we can't wait. We have a celebration every 2 years, and I think that, it's a very, very ill-advised one. But of course, you have to align with the global calendar, and at the end of the day, we have always insisted, and that's CAF, that we played the tournament in the middle of European season, which wasn't good for the players, and neither was it good for their clubs. In order to find a bearing, we had the opportunity to host the tournament in the summer, which we did in 19. And then subsequently, they started moving it again back to January. And now we've seen where the problem really lies. And this has been my argument over the years, that we have to play it in the summer, where there's no argument with the clubs. But to be quite honest, I think that it's a very sad development for Africa. The idea of an African Nations League doesn't make up for not having AFCON. And when Africans play every 2 years, in fact, CAF went and created something called CHAN, which I've never supported. I think that we need to get our act together. And at the end of the day, if they've decided on it, that's their decision. I'm just expressing my opinion, and my opinion is that it is not the right move for development of football in Africa. The argument about the club versus country debates, that's something that CAF could have solved by playing the tournament this summer. I mean, the South Americans play Copa America every 2 years for so long. They played it every 2 years. But now we are looking at this excuse of, what is the African Nations League? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. We cannot copy what the Europeans do. In Europe, you can travel around Europe easily. In Africa, you can't even travel around. It's so difficult. Even the CAF Champions League right now doesn't favor the clubs because
which is another
pretty
discussion
expensive.
that's been had
Traveling
for
on the
like
continent
years.
is a nightmare. So we need to go back and look at it and say what works for us. That's it. What works for us in Africa, not what is imposed on us. But at the end of the day, we live in a global world where we have to abide by a global calendar.
Yeah.
So be it.
And adding, if I may, adding to what Emeka is saying, obviously, you see, we've got now 3 editions of the Nations League here in Europe, and obviously the fans still don't like it. Why they don't like it? Because there's no champion, a real champion behind it. Yeah, it's like a friendly tournament. Yeah, there's no glory to be taken out. Of course, at the final tournament, which UEFA has now modified it, there is excitement, there is buzz, there's greatness. But obviously, when everybody is participating, it's more like a friendly tournament, and friendly tournaments people don't like because people want competition. It's just like going to a Colosseum at the medieval age. Somebody wins and somebody is dead, win or lose. Yeah, and that's what people want. Yeah, people want games. Yeah, what counts. Yeah, and want glory.
Yeah, and whatever.
And not just play
you
for
mentioned
pride
the Chan.
and
I
play for
don't think I've
marketing
ever
dollars.
seen a less prestigious, less interesting tournament concept in my life. Like, what on earth? What even is that? Like, to this day, I still don't get it at all. It's just pointless.
I've always felt that all the money put into Chan should be put into what we need.
Exactly.
A big
club
championship. That's where they should put the money in.
It's worthless, honestly.
Not create another.
Gentlemen, thank you both for your
tournament.
invaluable insights. AFCON 2025. It's here to remind us why African football, it's unmatched, unpredictable, unemotional, and impossible to ignore. And to everyone watching at home, if you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, and share the episode, and join us again on EEXSport Talk. See you next time.